and I stayed here in Georgia. When we were in high school, I heard rumors that she was kind of promiscuous, but I rarely saw her with anybody before we dated. And she wasn't one of these teenage girls who had a child. So as time goes on, I graduate high school, go to real estate school, and became a real estate agent. But I didn't pursue that career. I ended up becoming a real estate appraiser. One day I was out in the field. I get a text from an unknown number and it said, "Hey stranger, how are you?" I responded, "Who was this?" She said, "It's me, Kate." I was surprised and happy to hear from her. So I immediately called her and asked her how she was and what she was up to. She tells me she got a job offer from T-Mobile back here at home, and she decided to take it. And she was moving back from California within a week. Fast forward a week and Kate has moved back here to Georgia. And within a week we start hanging out together. I help her get situated in her new apartment, help her move furniture, etc. So, as time goes on, we are spending a lot of time together going on trips. When we were both off from work, after dating Kate officially for just over a year, I asked Kate to marry me, and she happily accepted. One of the conversations we had was about having kids. Kate couldn't have any kids. She was plagued with infertility issues. I didn't have any kids, and the women I dated before Kate, I always made sure I wore protection. We got married, and we were married for the better part of 17 years. It was fantastic. We hardly ever had any arguments, and our sex life was good. We didn't go at it like rabbits every night, but it was consistent. I would say Kate was in wonderful shape. She always wanted the gym. I started working out with her, but I wasn't as consistent as Kate was. She looked amazing. She was in her early 40s when things started to change. Kate started staying at the gym longer after work, but when I called her, she always answered the phone. So I had no reason to suspect anything. This went on for about 4 months before I confronted her and asked her if there was anything going on I should know about. She told me nothing was going on. She told me she added new exercises and added them to her routine, which made her gym session a little longer than normal. After that discussion, I didn't bring it up anymore, but little did I know that Kate was being unfaithful to me, but I just didn't know it yet. A few more months passed and our sex life began to take a nosedive, but I thought it was just because we were both getting older and our bodies were slowing down. One day I was at work and an old friend called me, and we made plans to have lunch that day. We started talking about old times, all the women we used to date. Then my wife's name came out of his mouth. I didn't tell him I was married to Kate. He begins to tell me about that rumor I heard in high school about how promiscuous she was, and I interrupted him and said, "Do you really believe all the stuff everybody says?" Well, he begins to tell me that there was a video of her with 2 guys. I said, "What? She was in a threesome?" And he says, "Yes. And apparently she was even promiscuous in college." After he said that, I laughed it off and told him, "Man, stop with this nonsense." And I told him I didn't believe him. After having lunch with my old friend, I couldn't help but think, did I make a mistake marrying Kate? After all, that was many, many years ago. When I got back to work, I really tried to not think about what my friend said. It was on my mind nonstop. So, after work, I went home with all this on my mind. And to my surprise, my wife was home sitting on the couch watching TV. We started chatting about our work days. And then I changed the subject and said, "An old friend called me today while I was at lunch." We chatted a bit, and we got on the subject of old girlfriends. We used to date and some of the rumors we heard. To my surprise, Kate didn't really want to chat about that. She said she didn't really want to talk about her old boyfriends. After all, it was eons ago. I agreed, but at the same time started to make me wonder after her response. So, the next day I had an extended lunch break and I wanted to go see Kate and surprise her with some lunch. When I got to her job, I was met by one of her female co-workers who looked surprised to see me. She begins to tell me that she was off and wasn't scheduled to come back to work until the following morning. I was shocked. Kate left the house for work in her T-Mobile uniform. What was she up to? At this point, I had suspicions that my wife was doing something she didn't want me to know about. My heart was beating a little fast and the thought crossed my mind that maybe she was cheating on me, but I told my brain to be quiet. So, I drove around for a while and eventually ended up at the gym. Kate used to go to after work every day. I drove around the parking lot, but I didn't see her car. So, I parked the car, walked in and glanced around, but didn't see Kate. As I started to leave, I got a call from Kate. saying she was at some type of training, but I knew she was lying because her coworker ratted her out. I simply said to her, "I will see you this evening," and hung up the phone. I didn't say I love you or anything. When I got home from work, Kate wasn't home yet, but she arrived shortly after, and we got into a heated discussion about her lying about her whereabouts. She tried to explain, but I just wasn't having it. So, I asked her if she was cheating on me. She said, "No, I am not cheating on you." And then I said, "Why did you lie to me then?" She says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You were off today from work, and you were not scheduled to go back to work until Monday. Why didn't you tell me that?" She calmly says, "Because I didn't think it was a big deal." I said, "Okay," and went into the home office to cool off. I walked right past her, and she just stood there. The next day, I did some research on divorce laws in this state, Georgia, and called a couple of attorneys to see what divorce would have in store for me. I had a free phone consult with an attorney and I told him my suspicions. And he said, the only way to know for sure is to get proof she is cheating. He said, you can put a GPS tracker on a car, go through her phone. Then he said, you might want to try a private investigator, and they are not cheap. After the phone consult, I called around to a few private investigators, and as luck would have it, I came across a retired homicide detective in the Atlanta area who was just starting his business. I made an appointment with him and basically told him, I think my wife is cheating on me and I don't want to go through a phone or put a GPS tracker on a car. He said, what about our phone records? I told him I really didn't have time for that. He asked, how does she make a living? I said to him, she is a cell phone rep for T-Mobile. Well, the private investigator only charged me $1,200. I thought that was a good deal compared to all the other private investigators I contacted. He said he wanted to be competitive with his prices in order to build up his clientele. I gave the private investigator her information, her vehicle, her work hours, her work address, some of the friends she hangs out with on occasion, and the gym she works out at. While all this is in motion, I contacted my bank just as a precaution and set up another account and started moving some money into it. Later that night, after driving home from work, I get a text from Kate saying she was going to be working late at the store. I didn't even respond because I felt she was lying to me, and she was. The private investigator sent me a video clip of her leaving T-Mobile, kind of dressed up in a way. That night, the private investigator followed her to a club where she met 4 people, 2 men and 2 women. They were at the club for about an hour. The private investigator was keeping me informed along the way. Then he says, Kate came out of the club with these people. Kate got into her car and followed them to a house that was about 20 minutes from the club. The most amazing thing about this private investigator, he had a state-of-the-art drone. He informed me the house they went to was so close to another house that it really couldn't get close enough physically to get what he needed. The houses were in a new subdivision and didn't have a lot of street lights. He got close enough with his camera, but he had to use his drone for the rest of the footage. He said after sunset, it started to get dark. He got footage of them walking into this house. And then one of the guys put his hands on Kate's backside, and she grabbed him and kissed him. As the private investigator told me, there were a few more people in the house as he could see through the window, but they all disappeared in the midst of a small crowd. So he positioned his drone to the back of the house, and that's where he caught the most heartbreaking scene. Kate was in this room nude with 2 other men, and you can imagine how I must have felt when I saw that. I sent a text to the private investigator and told him he didn't need to do any more surveillance. I had what I needed, but he said he would continue. He wanted to see what she would do after she left the house. He waited for just over an hour before Kate came out of the house. Then he followed Kate back to the gym. He said, it looked like she took a shower, changed back into her T-Mobile attire, and then followed her home. She got home around 9:30-ish. I pretended to be asleep as I had my back toward her. I didn't want her touching me. She had just got done having a threesome. The next morning, I couldn't wait to leave the house. We both got up together, but as soon as she jumped in the shower, I left without saying anything. I got to work and took a shower there. Kate sent me a text telling me to have a good day at work. I didn't respond to her text. I reached out to my private investigator and asked him to put the footage together and get it to me as soon as possible. At lunch, I told my boss I might be a little late coming back from lunch. He asked me if everything was okay. I simply said, my 17-year marriage just ended, and his mouth hit the floor. I almost got a speeding ticket driving to the attorney's office. As soon as I got there, I told him to go ahead and file for divorce on my behalf. I also told him I have proof of my wife's infidelity coming to him soon. When I got back to work, my boss told me to go ahead and take the rest of the day off, which was perfect for me. I knew Kate wouldn't be home, so I went home, packed a bag for about a week, and went to a hotel about 20 minutes from where we live. The financial stuff wasn't too bad. The only thing we had together was the house, which only had a small amount of equity in it. I didn't have any credit card debt, and she had a few credit cards, which she paid on. Fast forward 4 days, and Kate hasn't reached out to me at all. No texts, nothing. But people at my job and my friends have told me that she is telling people that I abandoned her, and she is filing for divorce on those grounds. Another 2 weeks passed, and she is served with divorce papers at her job. My friends have told me she hasn't said one word since she got the divorce papers. About a week before the hearing, I prepared a package with the footage of Kate in a threesome with those two men. I wanted to send this to everyone, but here in Georgia, that's a crime. But I politely left the tape to her car window on the driver's side. At the divorce hearing, it was a quiet win for me. She tried to get alimony, but my lawyer fought that, and he showed the court the proof of my wife's infidelity. She didn't get a dime, but she will get some of the equity when we sell the house. After the hearing, her lawyer informed my lawyer that she was not going to stay in the house. She will be out in about 45 days. She was responsible for her own credit cards, and she got to keep one of the 3 cars we own. About a month after the hearing, she moved out of the house and we sold it about 4 months later. She wanted to reconcile after the divorce, but I told her that will never happen and to never contact me again. She then said I was being a jerk. I just hung up on her. I am free now, and dating a bunch of women in 2023, it's tough. Women my age, even in their 50s, are even harder to deal with. In my opinion, he didn't waste any time. The most horrible thing is she lied right to his face and told him she wasn't cheating on him. I think I would have gone the GPS tracking route, but in my opinion, that still does not prove infidelity, only proves she was somewhere she possibly wasn't supposed to be. I said this a long time ago, long-term marriages are not immune to infidelity, but at the beginning of the story, the red flag for me was not taking that rumor a tad bit more seriously. Rumors are just that, rumors. But when more than one person says it, kinda makes you wonder,